Accessing Secure Channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching, and today we're talking about earning while learning. Sounds maybe a little enticing, but what if I told you that you can actually start building your real estate future even before your license is activated? So if you're in that mode of, okay, I'm on the fence, I'm not sure whether real estate is for me, this may in fact be something that you could kind of, it's not really a trial run, and because you can't act like an agent, you can't do anything like a real estate agent. But one of the aspects that you may be able to do is what we call referrals. And that's, in fact, what we're going to talk about. Right? It's perfectly legal with the right disclosures and the right format. So I'm not ever going to suggest anything that is unethical or unprofessional or dishonest. Informed consent is one of the key buzzwords in our industry. There are some opportunities with that. So referral opportunities before you get licensed, what we're talking about. Building your SOI, and SOI stands for Sphere of Influence. Sphere of Influence becomes kind of your core, where the people that know, like, and trust you live, operate, function. That's how where you keep your records about them, and how you are reminded to get in touch and stay in touch with them. Right? Then we're going to talk about community engagement and strategies around it, and how you can be genuine, sincere, and completely authentic, while also promoting your presence, your profile, your existence, and become memorable in your community doing the right things, which is really a wonderful way of growing a business and doing all kinds of good things. So, and then, of course, in addition to that, start thinking about you as a brand. Right? And that may sound weird for people that have never been in sales or business or what's have you, but just like Coca-Cola is a brand and McDonald's is a brand, when you become a real estate business, a real estate professional, you become the brand, right? It's not the real estate brokerage, although that's a brand too, but it's a brand on a different level. A lot of people that are not in real estate don't think about this, but it's actually fairly rare for us to be contacted because we're at brokerage A or brokerage B. It is typically, in the vast majority of cases, it is because there is a personal relationship, a personal connection. That very much then, makes the need for you being a brand, something that is recognizable and memorable, in a good way, by the way, makes that quite important. Okay, so that all of those things we're going to talk about. So let's talk about that referral opportunity part. Okay, let's make no bones about it. You cannot act in any way, shape, or form as a realtor without a real estate license. Okay, you just cannot do that. Okay, you can earn actual commissions if you were employed. Right? If you're an employee of a company or an individual that buys and sells real estate, you can earn money from doing kind of real estate work, but you're not an agent. You're now an employee of that particular entity, whether it's a corporate structure or a co-op or, even sole proprietorship. You could be employed by an individual. Okay. In fact, if you haven't heard how I got into real estate, that actually is how I got into real estate. In 1986, when we just arrived in Canada, I was contemplating, or was going to be in the book business. That never did happen, and got involved in one of these midnight seminars, one of these quick rich things that said, "Oh, you too can become a millionaire with no money down and stuff and all that." Anyway, I did get involved in it, and I was quite intrigued because I'd never seen anything like that. Coming from the Netherlands, that you don't see any of that stuff over there. So got intrigued, got interested, did some follow up with it, and actually got involved with the alumni. And through that, we met some Japanese investors. Long story very short, a year later, they bought 2 apartment buildings in the West End of Vancouver, and we were actually legally contracted as their representatives in Canada, and we got a letter from the real estate council at the time saying that we were perfectly legal to do that, because of course agents were concerned about it. Hey, you're not licensed, and you're asking questions on behalf of, and, well, that's because we're employed by, and that's how that worked, and that was perfectly legal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So that was about as close as getting to, being in real estate without a license, but it was very much an employment situation. Now, in theory, that's possible, and you could do that. It's pretty rare. And I'm going to suggest that most of the local entities will prefer to go with an agent. At that point in time, they don't need somebody on the payroll. This international situation at the time was, created by us, because we were trying to be creative in finding a solution to their situation and our opportunity. And we found a way to make that legal with lawyers and accountants and what have you. Build a whole team of people. It's a much longer story, not for today. However, there are definitely many other situations that do happen on a fairly regular basis, where as you become more immersed into the business of real estate, that it is quite common that people then all of a sudden start talking to you and say, well, we're thinking about, and we want to, and what about, and what about? And now you can't act as an agent, so you can't actually start spouting off what you think about real estate, because that gives the impression as if you're an agent. But then you can, at that point in time, say, well, hang on one second. I can't actually act on behalf of a brokerage. I'm not a real estate agent. I can't act like a real estate agent. But would you mind if I introduce you to, a licensed real estate agent, and they can help you with your plans or your thoughts or whatever it is that you plan on doing? And if they say yes, then you do that introduction. You bring people together. You do have to make a formal disclosure to that client, to that buyer or seller. It's not your client, it becomes the client of that agent. And when the formal disclosure is made and everybody's kind of signed off on that, then that disclosure is common. It's not new, there's nothing obscure about it. It's actually a requirement under the Act. But once that is done, you can earn a referral fee, and can be done in one of 2 ways. The agent can pay you out after the deal is completed personally. It can also, if you are licensed at the time that the completion of that transaction is taking place, can also then be paid through the brokerage, which would be the appropriate manner at that point in time, because obviously then you are licensed, and the advantage of that is that then the expenses and real estate expenses are then deductible of that referral income. Otherwise, it falls under regular income. There's no deduction. So there are some advantages both ways, but it can be done relatively straightforward. Like, you do need to do it with the consent of the brokerage, and you need to do it with the consent of the person that you're referring. And obviously, you need to have some sort of an arrangement with a real estate agent. Okay, but it can be done. Okay, and it is actually a lot more common than people think. In the past, I've had people that paid for all of their education expenses by way of referrals. And it also gave obviously the agent to be the confidence and the basically confirmation that the relationship building part was not going to be an issue. And for a lot of people, that is actually a bit of a scary part, right? They haven't been in that type of scenario where building relationships and building spheres of influence and basically promoting and marketing yourself is not something that a lot of people are particularly comfortable with in the initial stages of being in any profession, but in real estate in particular. Okay, so again, this is further, I guess, confirmation and encouragement to build trusted networks earlier, because you never know where opportunities and situations show up that may allow you to have a bit of an opportunity along the way. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Now, let's talk a little bit about your sphere of influence. And that's something that you can work on with or without a real estate license. It doesn't require a real estate license at all. Building your network, building your, as it is called, sphere of influence, the people around you that you have some degree of influence over, have a connection with, have a relationship with, and know, like, and trust a relationship with, is going to be critically important. If I let me give you a little bit of a numbers type perspective on a sphere of influence. And that's going to sound a little cold and detached, but it's necessary to illustrate why spheres of influence and having connection with a good number of people is important. The law of averages and statistics and history tells us that if you have a contact list of about 100 people and you're in touch with that group of 100 people about 24 to 33 times a year, and we'll talk about why and how that works in the future. But if you have 24 to 33 contact with that list of 100 people over a period of a year, it is likely to result in 4 to 5 real estate transactions. That can be referral transactions, can be direct transactions, but 4 to 5 real estate transactions. Okay. So there it is. Now you have a somewhat of a statistical measure by which you now can determine if I have enough connections, relationships with people that, see me as their real estate agent, the probability of me succeeding in the business has dramatically improved. Right? Now, again, there is no absolutes, and these are relatively large scale samples where these uh, equations do show up to work. Having said that, that doesn't apply to everybody, right? If you're saying the wrong things to the right people, it's still going to turn out wrong. Okay, if you're saying the right things to the wrong people, it also doesn't work out so well. So it's the right things to the right people in the right situation at the right timing that relationships improve and progress. If you take the approach of the giver's gain in building relationships with a sphere of influence, you typically are on the right track, right? If you are there to hound people about buying or selling real estate, very quickly that will turn sour, and your list, your sphere of influence will actually diminish. So giver's gain is really what a lot of that is all about. Okay, so if you already, and then you can look in your phone, you can look in your Facebook, you can your social media, your followers, but I got to be caution you, friends in social media, friends in Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or what have you, are not at all the same as people in your sphere of influence. Okay, And even if you call yourself an influencer or think that you are an influencer, that does not mean that they will, in fact, be influenced by your decisions of buying and selling real estate. You may have some impact and you may have made your life a little bit easier, but it's not quite the same because of what I've said before about what the internet does from a marketing and lead generation perspective in real estate. The internet is very much a kind of like a digital shopping center, right? If you go to the mall in real world, and in the mall you see, I don't know, a pair of shoes. You had no need for a pair of shoes, but you see this pair of shoes, and all of a sudden you fit the pair of shoes. You don't buy the pair of shoes because you don't need the pair of shoes, but you do look at it, you touch it, you look around it, you try on 2 or 3 other pairs, and then you move on. Well, looking at real estate on the internet is kind of the same thing. Right? Lots of people look at real estate on the internet all day, every day, because they see a sign go up and they look up the property, they drive by something, they hear about something, they hear that the neighbor is for sale or that there's something going on that's 2 streets over, or they start thinking, what if? What if I could retire to this city or that city? Or what if I got a job over here or over there? What would life be like? What would work be like? What would homes be like in places where you might want to go? So no real active plan of making a move, but just genuine casual interest. Well, between that genuine, kind of semi-interested phase and actually buying or selling, if there is any real need, eventually it's somewhere around 9 months. That's kind of what the statistics say. So, an inquiry from the internet is a very slow inquiry most of the time. We call them a cold lead. Okay, and we use nurturing processes and what have you. It can convert to transaction, but it is slow. Whereas with the sphere of influence, if you get a referral or inquiry from people that already personally know, like, and trust you, yeah, it's fairly likely that will be a transaction within 90 to 120 days. So about half the time. Okay, so that's a significant difference in how you connect and relate with people. So therefore, building a very strong sphere of influence is kind of your core group of people that year over year transactions will come out of that. And yes, year over year, that hopefully that group of people grows as you become more known, do more work, and do some what we call proactive lead generation as well. Okay. And then, of course, you do the updates. You position yourself, as uh, you know, while you're not licensed, as being I'm in training, right? And make sure that you're not going to breach any laws and rules or regulations. And again, that's also your self protection, right? Because if somebody sees you doing something that is beyond what is allowed as an unlicensed person, there is always the risk that somebody files a complaint with BCFSA. And if you're found to have acted outside of what is allowed, they then could withhold granting you a license, even if you have passed the exam and completed all the courses and what have you. So, staying within the boundaries is a very important thing. And I got to say that for many people, this whole referral thing is a non-issue. They don't even want to go near that. Okay? And that's fine. I would still encourage you to build your sphere of influence, build your relationship, because you will need connections with lots and lots of people in some way, shape, or form. And part of that can come from community engagement. Right? In a future episode, we're going to talk about superpowers. And superpowers are connected to community engagement in a large way. If you are passionate about something, right, that you would spend time, effort, energy, sometimes even money on because it's important to you, it stirs your heart, your soul, your spirit. and you can somehow connect that engagement, that involvement with your profession, then that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So let me illustrate it with a story. I worked with an agent, and I was still in Maple Ridge at the time. It's about an hour east of Vancouver. Um, and there was a very highly regarded realtor there. At the time, I'd been in the business for 20, 25 years and, had adult daughters. And unfortunately, her husband had passed away. And anyway, so one day she walked into the office and said, I'm here to say goodbye because I'm done. I'm retiring from real estate and I'm moving out of the country. And we were all literally flabbergasted. We were stunned, right? Because this was a lady that was doing great work, was a good motivator, was basically a role model for many of the newer agents because she was also always willing to teach and train and very, very kind in general, yet a highly successful and very high producing real estate agent, which doesn't always go hand in hand. We'll talk about dynamics in real estate at some point in time in the future, but you'll find that many successful realtors are very secretive about what they do and how they do things, and because basically you are the competition, right? That you got to keep that in mind. That even though you can't live without the other realtors, many realtors view the other realtors as the competition. So, but this particular realtor, not so. And anyway, so when she made the announcement that she was retiring, people started to ask, well, what, Iris, why are you retiring? What's going on? What's happening? He said, well, I've just hit a very significant milestone in my life where I've been able to earn enough income that I was able to build and open 2 schools in Peru, and now my daughters and I are moving to Peru and going to maintain those schools. Right now, that's superpower, right? Iris received a lot of inspiration, a lot of motivation, a lot of encouragement, the ability to stay disciplined, focused, and committed, and overcome all kinds of challenges and all kinds of disappointment because she had a crystal clear, superpower like motivation to do good in her what was her community. It wasn't a local community, but it was her community. Right? And was able to use that inspiration, that motivation to encourage her to keep doing what she was doing until the point that she had reached what she wanted to reach and decided to move on. So if you look at yourself being very involved emotionally or psychologically, or you have a passion for something, and you can somehow connect that in strategically and objectively and for the right reasons to your real estate profession or any profession for that matter, then both win, right? The community wins because you're going to do things for the right reasons and add value to the community, make the community a better place. And at the same time, it can help you in your business. That doesn't mean that you have to have your business name tattooed all over the place. You can just do the right thing and report on it and be engaged with events and speaking engagements, do maybe some sponsorships if you want to stay in the background and what have you. Okay. There's many success stories around community engagement and making that work very, very well for the community, but also and equally well for the individual. So that's definitely an encouragement that I have for you. And yeah, you start talking, thinking, and working about what you want you to look like, to feel like, to act like, what your voice is, what your identity is, right? What do you want to be, right, when you grow up in the business of real estate? And uh, to some degree, that's branding, yes, but it's also you finding yourself, right, and being aware and conscious of how you can add value, both on a professional level, but also on a personal level, and then combine the dots there. Right? It's a really good way of doing things. Now, early branding can work really, really easily by you starting to journal. So if you decide that, hey, I'm going to do this, or I'm thinking of doing this, maybe even before you take out the educational part, in your sphere of influence, whether it's on social media or individually, and start talking about it. Hey, I'm thinking about a career in real estate. What do you think? Do you think I'm suited for it? And what is your advice? What's your guidance? What's your direction? Right? There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would say that people will buy into that really, really quickly and will support that direction quite clearly. And there's something else that happens, and that has to happen. Let's, for the sake of argument, say that you're a teacher, or you have a previous profession, or you have no profession whatsoever, but you're really good in sports or in social engagement or what have you. So people know you from what they know you from, right? From your previous career, from your hobbies, from your sports. And now, in your sphere of influence, you need to start making them realize that you have a new persona, a new entity, a new career, a new business that they need to think about when they see you, right? So when real estate comes up in their life, that you are their realtor, not whomever was there in the past. Because trust me, everybody knows at least one realtor, and most people know 4 or 5, right? So you taking that preferred role is going to take some doing. It just doesn't happen just because you say so. Right? It takes effort, it takes energy, it takes time. And if you don't make people aware of it, you can't make the assumption that they will remember. Right? I always make it real simple. Why do you think Coca-Cola is still advertising? It's not like people haven't heard from Coca-Cola, but there's always somebody else competing for that top of mind awareness or top of preference position. Right? That's really the ideal position that you're aiming for. What is, or who is the preferred person of choice in real estate in the mind of the people that are your target audience? If you're not it, what are you going to do to become it? Right? That's really, if there's a magic bullet that I can teach you, that's it. How can you become the preferred person of choice in the mind of your target audience? And that means you need to add value to their life, not just in real estate, but in life in general, right? Particularly when people go through transitions in their life. Okay? And that takes discipline, consistency. Hey, there's my 2 favorite words again. Okay? It just, those 2 words are magical. If you are consistently disciplined, you will find a way to succeed. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, says Jeff Bezos. And he's done all right for himself, Mr. Amazon. So, yeah. All right. So here's the exercise. Here's your homework, so to speak. Write down 20 people's name and contact information. Who might move? Who might invest? The good question to ask is, hey, if the right opportunity came about, would you be interested in making a move? Now, you can't actually ask that because that's soliciting business, and that's close to borderline is what you can and what you can't do. Okay, but you can make it a hypothetical question in a social media post, right? Okay, you can't do a hard sales under any circumstance. It will backfire, by the way. It will absolutely backfire, right? People will shun you, and you lose connections rather than gain connections. But you can do hypothetical situations. Say, hey, if you were going to think about buying or selling real estate, what would that look like? What would be your utopian house be, or where would you want to move? Do you have any kind of time? And I'm not suggesting that you are, but no, I'm just trying to get a read on how people think and what people think about for when I'm in the real estate business, right? So have that conversation with particularly the people that know, like, and trust you the best, and learn from what the responses are. Okay. Okay. Here's some resources, tools that we are putting into the package. So there's a first 50 names builder. I'm going to suggest if you, by the time that you're actually licensed, have a sphere of influence list of somewhere around 300 people, you will have made a huge um, progress and huge benefits for yourself. Right? It's a shortcut like you wouldn't believe. It, and if all of those are aware that you're going through the learning process of buying or becoming licensed in real estate, wow, right? So that you don't all of a sudden show up. Oh, by the way, I'm in real estate. No, they've already learned all of that with you, right? So journaling, talking about it, writing about it, um, doing little videos about it, have a little bit of fun about it, all that you can learn. So I'm preparing to be licensed in real estate. Not licensed yet, but excited to share insights who want me to include you in my updates, right? It's probably okay. I'm going to say that that's a good script, actually. If you want to read something, never eat alone, which, if you think about that in its own right, just that statement alone, right? Never eat alone. Always have a purpose with food, eating, drinking, being somewhere. Have a purpose. Find a reason to chat with people. Always a good idea. Always a good idea. All right. So the momentum really starts well before you're licensed, right? This is really what I want you to think about is this is an adventure that you're and an investment that you're making in yourself and in your future. And you very much have control and influence over what that looks like, feels like, acts like very early on. Now, if that scares you now, that's a good thing to find out now, don't you think? Then it's, can you test yourself? Can you put yourself a little bit under fire and put a little bit of fear of God under you to, start thinking about, okay, this is part of reality. I have to do these things if I want to succeed. It's not optional. Right? Building a network of people around you is not optional. It's not, people are just not going to show up and say, "Oh, here, come list my house," just because you now have a piece of paper that says that you're licensed. That doesn't happen. Okay? You have to actually go out and get it. So if you have difficulty with that part, it is a learned habit. Okay, everybody. There's very few people that go like, "Oh, let me go cold calling," or "Oh, let me go door knocking," or "Oh, let me go make new relationships." Very few people are that. My wife is one of those. I'm not. I'm not one of these socialites that likes doing that kind of stuff. I can speak for 100 in front of 100 people, but one-on-one individual lead generation, it's not really my thing. But I'll do it because I know it has to be done. Right? So if you have difficulty with things like that, then how are you going to deal with that? Then how are you going to overcome it? You can test that now. Right? You don't have to be licensed to build a network of people around you. Right? Trust me, it's actually quite easy. But it takes commitment and time and energy and effort. So that's what you can, that's probably your biggest exercise between now and you actually making the decision if you want to be licensed in this business is, can I overcome things like fear of talking to other people or the possibility of having to deal with rejection, which is another way of saying, am I afraid of talking to other people? Because part of that comes with the degree of rejection, of course. It's not personal rejection. People are not ready to buy or sell. Okay, so don't take it too personal because it's not. Okay, So, and then it obviously comes with messaging. So, do you know some script, some dialogue, some language? So, one of the other studies that you may want to undertake, again, at this point in time, doing some homework, doing some research is a good thing. So, one of the things you may want to do is start thinking about, okay, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? What do I need to have if I wanted to become the best real estate agent in my area? What would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that? How would I, position myself? What would that look like? Right. Again, part of that business plan is creating the awareness, the brand, the image, the profile of who you are as a person. And I don't want you to become somebody else. This is not about you creating something artificial, but how are you going to represent you as you, being genuine and authentic as much as possible, while still being professional and being in connection and being appropriate in the moment in all circumstances with working with buyers and sellers. And you don't need to work with everybody. And by the way, you don't need to like everybody. You still need to be appropriate with them and professional with them, and you need to look after their best interest because that's your fiduciary duty. Right? So it's, you know, getting to understand what your role and position in the business is, and then building your brand and your activities and your models around that. Okay? And at this point, that's really good exercise to become aware of. I hope that helps you. And in the process, guess what? Yes, there are going to be some opportunities that are going to show up. So what we're going to cover in the next chapters is things that we touched on here a little bit, right? We've talked about business planning. We've talked about the big why. We've talked a little bit about superpower. So we're going to touch a little bit more thoroughly in the next episodes about that, because all of what we do, all of what we feel strongly about in how we teach and how we coach and how we work with agents from early on in their career to well established and highly successful is based on what we call the 7 essentials to success in real estate sales, which is really the 7 essentials to any business. Any business. We've just translated and condensed them into the essentials for real estate. Okay. So we're going to touch on that and begin on that, and that is an exciting process, because once you start realizing that those are 7 very key essentials in any business, including real estate, things start to fall into place a lot easier, a lot clearer, and you can follow patterns. And if you decide that real estate is not for you, but another business is for you, you can still apply those same 7 essentials to a large degree. So it'll help you in a big way, no matter which business venture you move into, right? Thanks so very much for being here. I hope that you're going to be there in the next episode, and have a fantastic week. All the best.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.